Hey, um, this is going to be a somewhat more advanced tutorial for various LinuxMint versions, both the Debian edition and the main one that's Ubuntu based. Basically, this is something that I came across the other day when I was wanting to test drive the LinuxMint Debian Edition 5, the beta, which just was recently announced maybe a week or so ago. And so I've got this laptop that has the regular Debian Edition on there. And so I just went ahead and fired up the live CD and used gpartition to shrink the current Linux Mint to about half the size of the disk, and then created a new partition and then installed onto that from the live CD or DVD. And and the important thing here is that I was using the BTRFS filing system on both of these, but it really, even if it was just the new one that I was installing, I'd have the same problem. And so, yeah, so basically the install went fine, let me just show you some of this screen grabs from the installer. If you when you get to the partitioning, if you select manual, it'll let you do things like make a custom size swap partition. That's what this guy is here, and then you can choose what kind of file system you want to use for the main one. Then this is where root is mounted on mine, and then so you would right click on this and select edit partition, and then you get this little menu here, and from the pull down you can select root, and then for the format as, you can select BTRFS. And but you'll notice though, if you know anything about BTRFS, then you know that it uses subvolumes, which we will talk about in a bit. Usually those are represented, at least in the past Ubuntu versions of Linux, there'd be a little @ symbol here, and that you would select that to let the installer know that you are going to be installing into a subvolume. So apparently that does not show up anymore. If you try to put it in manually here, it rejects it. So you basically just have to select root and then click OK, and then continue with your install. It also, like the next step in the installer, will show this screen, and by default it's selected to install the Grub menu on the main device. I think you can use the pull down to select different partitions, but it's usually not a great idea. I initially unchecked this and continued with my install, and then went through just fine, no hiccups, and then I rebooted. And this is basically what I saw. Let me close this guy down, and I'll just back up here. And basically something like this, where it starts booting, and then there's no additional entry here. So what this means is that basically the OS probe stuff that's in Grub did not detect my my new partition, So I went through the install again, and this time I left the install grub box checked, and you know, it went through just fine, and then I rebooted, and now I could boot into the new the beta version of Linux Mint, but the other one was not visible from the grub menu. So, you know, what's going on with that? Well, it turns out that because in that installer, you know, there's no explicit selecting of the subvolume. You basically have this situation. And by the way, if you don't know what a BTRFS is, it's Wikipedia has a good page on it. It's often called ButterFS, or but it basically stands for B tree file system, and you can read about all the specifics there. Debian also has on their wiki page. They have quite a bit of information about BTRFS. You know, it's similar to ZFS. It's not a journaling file system. It's supposed to be sort of, you know, the next improvement over things like ext4 and things like that. Probably the best thing about it is this feature here, the ability to make snapshots. And snapshots are basically read-only subvolumes, and subvolumes are hard to explain, but they're basically like file system namespaces, and they're not. You can make basically take a file system tree, you know, like root, and it's got, you know, etc., and boot and home and all that stuff under it, and you could make a subvolume of just home, and you could mount that someplace else, but it doesn't like increase the amount of space used on the file system by as the same amount as that normally would. It's basically mapping, I guess is a good term, those file inodes to the original, and yeah, so it kind of creates the illusion of extra file system spaces without actually adding extra space to it, if that makes any sense. Anyway, it has a lot of neat uses, in it, which I'll get to. Anyway, that was a little bit of a sidetrack. Right. So BTRFS, you know, subvolumes are a big aspect of it, and this is the crux of the problem, is that the type of subvolume that is created with the LinuxMint installer, or, you know, the Debian installer for that matter, is of this second type. And if you come to, you know, this is the online documentation for the BTRFS file system, and if you come to subvolumes to this page here, and you scroll down here, it tells you a little bit about them. You know, they're like a normal directory with some additional operations, but this is the important part here, that it can be accessed two ways. The first is like any other directory, accessible by the user, and the second is as a separately mounted file system with these two options, subvol or subvol ID. And in the latter case, the parent directory is not visible or accessible. See, this is the issue, that it's not visible or accessible to the user or to Grub or to the installer. Well, to Grub anyway. And so there's just no way for that OS prober to pick it up, because you know, initially I searched around to see if there was a fix for this, and I did find this. This is on the Ubuntu support page from 2017, and somebody's complaining that the Grub2 OS prober isn't seeing their Butter file system subvolumes. And this is what you used to see in the installer. You'd see an entry like this. And so anyway, they came up with a little workaround, and they're basically this bit down in here where they're making symbolic links so that Grub doesn't have to see this. It can just look for these, and then it can find the kernel file and the initial RAM file system file and the FS tab file that shows, you know, what gets mounted where and how. That's usually under the etc directory. Yeah, so this is a workaround that is not usable for the current versions of LinuxMint using the Butter file system, or Debian for that matter. Right. So the thing is, you basically have to manually create a menu entry for Grub, and if you go to the Debian support pages, you'll find an example of a typical Grub 2 menu entry, and this would usually go into well, I'll show you where it goes. Let's go. Oop, there we go. Yeah. So I'm going to use a Lynx text browser because it's just kind of an easy way to move around the file system. So this is the directory that would have this stuff. So we'll change to that, and this is the where you would put your custom boot menu entry. And you notice there's a little Grub backup directory here, and I'll just go in here and I'll show you what the original one looks like. And it's just, you know, it's mostly empty. There's a little bit of shell code here, and this is what I created, and I've tested this and it works. Because I'm using a virtual machine, I'm basically fudging this a little bit. I'm using the same partition, and this is just for my own reference, this UUID thing here. UUID stands for Universally Unique ID, and this is pretty typical tagging for partitions on hard drives these days. Lots of tools can use it, including Mount. And anyway, so if you look down in here, this is kind of like what we were just looking at on the Debian support pages. This is what will appear in my in the Grub boot menu once we've updated it, and then I've got some entries here, and I'll show you kind of where I got this. You can see there's a search line. This is important. There's a commented out version of this that does not use the UUID. And if you opt for this, like say you don't know what this is, or you just don't want to use it for some reason, then you'd use this option, File, and then you would put this is the kernel file, which is usually a link to the actual kernel. And similarly, down here for the Linux kernel line, here's the version that uses UUID. They're always much longer. And this is the same one that just uses the actual device, so it's /div/SDA2 in my case. Now, if this was like a actual hardware, you know, my first LinuxMint operating system would probably be on the first partition. And so, and my install, if it was the next partition over, would probably be 2. And you can verify that through a program like this. You come up here to the disks. I think this will show you information on your hard drive. So, like if we click on this one here, there's the UUID string, and I think this is copyable. So you could cut and paste that somewhere. There's the device. It doesn't tell you anything more, but you could probably get that from the mount command. So like here's some I've run mount and just filtered on just the type of BTRFS, and you can see there's these 2 entries, and this is what's created by default when you select the BTRFS file system as in the LinuxMint installer. So you can see you've got 2 subvolumes. You got the root one, and then you've got a at home. And then you can also use this find command, and that makes kind of a nice little tree. I use it with these options so that it's not showing sudo file systems. And once again, you can see the basic layout, and then the all the different things. And you notice here's those 2 options that were mentioned in our over in here. Let's see, where were we? Yeah, these 2 options here. That's what's being used. Yeah, so anyway, getting back to getting back to our custom thing here. I've gone ahead and already updated this, and I've also put in, if you don't put this this quiet splash in here, then you'll see all the nasties in there. You know, you won't get the pretty little splash screen with the little spinning graphics. Yeah, and then once you're done with that, you would basically do sudo update-grub, and you just enter that. And we can do it again, and it's not going to do any additional changes. You know, go through and make your new menu. Now, if that seems like a lot of work, there is a somewhat easier way, especially like if you're not really sure what the current Linux Mint operating system that you can boot into. You know, what does that menu entry look like, right? That's kind of a big question mark. So this is an easy way to fix this, or to get that information. So you just come into the software manager and type in grub in the search thing, and this program here, Grub Customizer. If you click on that, it'll give you some information here. Notice down here the second star edits the contents of menu entries or creates new ones. Internally, it edits the 40_custom file, and that's what we were just looking at. So I've actually already got this installed, so I'm just going to close this guy, and it's just let's see, I think it's under admin. Yeah. And you do need elevated privileges, so you'll have to use your password. Yeah. So since we've already created our custom entry, it's this guy here. But say we didn't do that, you know, and we don't know where to start with that. You would definitely see this guy here. That's the main entry that you see in the grub menu, and then under advanced stuff here, usually it's like that, and then you click on it and it'll give you these additional older kernels and recovery mode options. But this is really the one, oops, I don't want to rename it. This is the one that you would want to look at. And if you come up here to this edit thing, looks like a pencil, click on that. And let's stretch it out a little bit. And you can see this looks a lot like what we were just looking at. There's some additional things here, like for the Exen platform. And then there's also some additional hints here that you can pass to the search command for grub. But other than that, it's basically the same thing. They have some additional echo lines in here. You can put those in if you want, but they're really just optional. Yeah, but the nice thing about this is that, you notice you can select this text here, and you can right-click and say copy. And then you can just cancel out of this, and then you could go back and paste that stuff into using a regular text editor into that 40_custom file. And but you can also use this too. You know, yeah, I'll just click on this to kind of show you what it looks like. For some reason, it selects other here. But say we were going to create a new one. You come over here to this plus, you click on that, and we'll just call this foo bar. And then we'll come down here. We'll select Linux for the type, and then the partition, we'll select our partition. And you see it's kind of filled a lot of this stuff in, and it's also found the UUID and filled all that stuff in too. But there's a few things missing, and I'll show you. For one, you notice it does not have the subvolumes. So if you click in there and you just go ahead and just type that stuff in, right? And then in kernel parameters, notice it's missing the read-only and the root flags equals subvol equals at. And you know, as you type that in, it's actually tacking it in over here. And so you can see what else? You know, it doesn't have the some of the other stuff like the I think it's insert mod part_ms-dos, and it doesn't have the insert mod BTRFS. Yeah, so you would probably want to add that stuff in too. But yeah, but you know, and you can say OK here, go back up here, click on edit again, check it, see if is there anything else I want to put in there. Maybe this, put this stuff in there. We'll copy that. Say OK. Come down here. Edit it again. Paste. See, so you can basically kind of go back and forth and just get it so that it looks more or less like the other one. The only difference is that, like you were saying before, the partition would be, you know, if you were, your main one, OS is on, you know, the first partition, then this would be the second, and, you know, if the other one's on the second, this might be the third. Yeah. And say OK. So, Yeah. So, and you can continue with this, but unless you click save, it's not going to do anything. It won't. If you click save here, it'll go and write all this stuff to grub and make a new config file. It's basically running that sudo update-grub command. But if we come to file and just say quit, it'll ask you quit without saving. Yes. So then we haven't made any changes. So you can just use that just to kind of collect the information you need and still use your whatever your favorite editor is to make your modifications for Grub. Yeah. Yeah, so now we've done all that stuff, and then we'll just we'll go ahead and reboot. See, and then there's our new partition. And if you use type E, it would let you edit that. Like say if you've made a typo or something, and you sort of have learned enough to where you could intelligently edit this, you could come in here and make your changes. Say you forgot this, or and it's a really basic editor. You just backspace to delete things, and you just use the arrow keys to move around. And to save what you've edited, you would use for some reason my mouse is always screwed up in here. Let me see if I can, there we go. So you would use Control X or F10 to save your edits and then boot, or you can use Escape to just discard those edits and return to the Grub menu. So that's what I'm going to do, because I'm pretty confident this works. And then we'll hit enter. And it should just boot up. I'm going to pause this for a moment. Okay, so we're all booted up, and in our new install. And yeah, so getting back to the Butter file system and TimeShift, what's the big deal, right? Well, I'll just briefly kind of show you. So let's just say, so we got the new install, and come in here to Documents, and we'll just make a new file here. Call it foobar. We'll open it up and type some stuff in. Okay, so we've created a document, and we're like, all right, we're gonna make a snapshot. So you come in Administration to TimeShift, and TimeShift can do a lot of different things, but we're just gonna do just a basic thing here. Initially, there is nothing. As you come up into Settings, notice you have two options: rsync and Butter file system. You can use rsync, but it's much slower, and you lose. You're not taking advantage of the features of the Butter file system, making subvolumes and read-only snapshots and stuff. So it seems to have sensed that that I have BTRFS, so that's okay. This is our snapshot location. We're just going to use the defaults. You can schedule this so that it runs weekly or whatever, or at boot monthly. And it just depends on what you're doing. If you have a media you know, it's a media PC, you know, you might not even need any, or maybe do it monthly or something. And then under users, by default, home is not selected. But, you know, for an end user, it's kind of useful to have this. So I went ahead and, so I usually select it. And then this is just, you can select different time formats from this pull down. The default seems okay there. So we'll say okay. And then we'll create a snapshot here. And this is the first one, so it takes a little time. It's, you know, it's a full snapshot, and you can see there's, it's, you know, 7 gigabytes. And if you want to just add a little something helpful tag, or, you know, so you know why you made this, you can click here twice on the end, and we'll just call it, you know, factory reset, so we can get that factory fresh reset smell, right? So we've created that, and so we're gonna here, let's just move this to another workspace here. We'll move it to workspace 2, and then we'll go back to workspace 1 and open up our file manager. And doot. Sometimes it takes a little while. Okay, there we go. So we'll go back into documents. There's our file, and we're just going to delete it. It's like, you sure you want to permanently delete it? Yep. It's like, oh shit, I didn't mean to do that. Well, dang. Well, TimeShift to the rescue. We can come to our previously made snapshot here and click Browse. And after some time, it opens up, and you notice here's our root subvolume, and here's the home subvolume. And we'll just double click in there, go into mine, and under documents, and there's my file. Hey, all right. And I can copy this thing and then go back here and paste it in, and boom, I got my file back. Whew. How about that? And if we open it up, there it is. It really is. Yep. Oh, it's gonna, let's just wait. We'll just let it work. These virtual file machines are a little bit they get a little gummy at times. Anyway, yeah. So that is what's nice about these things. Another use for these is to, you know, if you're getting ready to make some, you know, like update your system, you know, by hand, or you're going to do some maybe partition resizing or something, you can make a snapshot in here, and then if it goes sideways, you can come in here and you can restore it. So if you just click on restore, it'll just, boom, it'll just restore it. And if we close this, and let's go back, oh here, you can just actually come into system monitor. I think that will show you, yeah, you can see that subvolume is mounted now. Similarly, if we come back into our terminal, and let's see if we can find it. Yeah, here we go. Notice it shows the, here, let me make it a little smaller. We'll run it one more time. You can see there's that extra subvolume. Basically, you got root mounted under run TimeShift backup. And if we come into We'll use this links browser again. Sure enough, there's our home. There's root, and under TimeShift BTRFS, there's our snapshot. And once again, there's home, there's root. So you would, but the cool thing about this, like I was saying, it doesn't increase the space that's utilized on the file system the way like a regular file system would. So it's pretty cool in that regard. And I've been using it for a couple of years, and it's been pretty solid. So I think they've gotten a lot of the kinks out. Anyway, that is Linux Mint with Butter file system and dual booting and fixing things with Grub. And also a little bit of an intro to TimeShift. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful, and see you next time.